and gentlemen, we're heading to a very interesting session. So I'm going to request all of you to please be here with us because we have somebody in our midst, somebody very, very well known who truly does not need an introduction, but he's someone who guides us on how mythology can be so relevant in the modern times, especially in areas of management, governance, and leadership. He's trained in medicine. He worked for about 15 years in the healthcare and pharma industries before he focused on his passion full time. He is actually an author of 41 books and over 1,000 columns with bestsellers such as My Gita, Jaya, Sita, Business Sutra, and the Seven Secrets series. He's been a speaker at TED Talks as well and has spoken so much on myths that mystify East versus West. And his TV shows include Business Sutra on CNBC TV 18 and Devlok on Epic TV. Now you know who I'm talking about. He consults organizations on culture, diversity, and leadership, and also consults various television channels and filmmakers on storytelling. Ladies and gentlemen, with a huge round of applause, with a huge round of virtual applause, let's welcome Mr. Devdutt Pattanayak. Welcome, sir. We're delighted to have you in our midst, and it's now over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. These are strange times where we are talking to screens and we aren't sure really whether people are on the other side. And really, the world has changed dramatically and we'll never go back to the way we were because now we are the post-COVID generation. We are a generation of people who is suddenly dealing with screen time at a level which is unprecedented. So, people keep asking me repeatedly that is there something in mythology that helps us understand the situation and the changes in the transmission and the transitions that we're going through. Before I proceed, just want to make sure that I can be seen and heard. Everything is fine? Can you just confirm that so that we are all in order?
Yes, sir, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I've had experiences where I've been talking and nothing is online. So it's always better to check. So what does mythology deal with? At one level, we always say these are old stories. They are dealing with they've been around for hundreds of years, thousands of years. But what is important is to recognize that mythology is not really talking about incidents and history, as some people would like to see it. They're dealing with the human emotional conditions. So it's about your emotions. It's about how we think, how we feel, what we desire, and how do we see life. And this is captured through stories which have been generated over hundreds of years. And different cultures look at life differently, look at calamity differently, and we are facing a calamity. A major change has happened. And how do you make sense of this calamity? So, for example, the story of Noah's Ark from the Old Testament of the Bible makes you aware of what you do in a calamity. So the story goes that the whole world was covered with flood. There was water everywhere. There was no land. And Noah was asked to build an ark. And on the ark, he lived alone with his family and a pair each of all animals in the world. And he did not know when the rains would end. So for many, many days, the entire family and all the animals, the male and the female, they sat in this boat waiting for the waters to end. Now think of the days of the lockdown. We were all in our own respective houses. We were with our families. And we were all like Noah's Ark. We were sort of trapped. We didn't know when it would end. 1 month, 2 months, 10 months, a year. We were all dealing with family members and we discovered that all family members are like different animals. There is the dog who needs attention. There is a cat who wants to be independent. Some get along, some don't get along. We realize how much we valued not being part of being in the same space all the time, how important it was to get out of the house for a few minutes, even if it meant long traffic jams and visits to distant places. We suddenly started missing those flights, those delayed flights, those late night flights, because sitting every day at home, looking at the wife and the wife looking at the husband and everybody looking at the child became very, very traumatic. And this is what Noah would have gone through, sitting with the dogs, the cats, the tigers, the lions, the serpents, all on that boat and managing to stay alive. There was the predator who wanted to eat the prey. There was the beehive creating trouble for everyone. There were the insects, there were the reptiles, there were the fish, there were all kinds of creatures. And I think stories like Noah's Ark reflect what we are going through. That's what stories do. Stories reflect what we are going through. The moment I tell you about Noah's Ark and I tell you about the lockdown, you suddenly realize what's going on in this world. There are calamities when we are all alone, locked up, lost, wondering, will this end? And when it ends, and seems to be ending, but we are not 100% sure, it goes back and forth, you're wondering if life will be the same. If it changes, what will change? So in Ramayana, for example, you have Ram about to be king. Everybody's excited he's going to be king, and suddenly he's told he has to go to the forest for 14 years. And he goes to the forest. So suddenly a calamity strikes. And when you go to the forest, it means you have no staff, you have no servants, you have no comfort, you have no luxury. You have to live in the forest. You have to fend for yourself, find your own food, your own shelter, make your own clothes. There are demons everywhere. There is no guarantee that of the next meal. And then when you come back after 14 years, are you the same person? Are you the young prince who lived in the family, in the palace, who was taken care of parents? Everybody took care of you. And suddenly for 14 years, when you're thrown in the jungle where you dealt with demons and you dealt with monkeys and vultures and all kinds of creatures, you saw people being mean and cruel. You saw brothers fighting. And when you return home, are you the same person? What transforms about you? What changes in you? Are you a better person, or are you a cynical, broken person? Does Ram, who returned to Ayodhya, turn out to be a wiser man or a broken man? Will you, at the end of COVID, be a kinder man, a kinder woman, a kinder person, or will you be cynical? Right now, since you all are in the power industry and you talk about smart grids, I suddenly realized while I was reading the newspaper just 2 days ago about what is happening in Texas, how a grid collapses, and one of the richest countries in the world, Texas, known for its oil, suddenly the people have no access to power. I heard of friends who were driving around the city to keep warm because the only place where there was heat was in their car. I heard about people who were collecting snow and keeping it in bathtubs and boiling it with water, going back to a primitive lifestyle. So much for smart housing, so much for Alexa, so much for Siri. And at the end, you're boiling snow to get water, to wash yourselves, to drink, to stay alive. And that is if you are lucky enough to have your own house. Millions of so many people have no homes, the homeless people, the poor people. We don't even discuss what has happened about them, where they found shelter in freezing temperatures. Things that we take for granted. Electricity will always be there. It isn't there. You just drive a little outside Bombay and you just take it for granted that every few hours there will be no connectivity, no connection, no electricity, no current. The privilege of having electricity, the privilege of having running water, the privilege of having clean air. I think calamity teaches us the basics in life. And that is what COVID has taught an entire generation of millennials who were used to all the comforts in the world and suddenly realized it can go away like this. Many of us had jobs and therefore we were lucky, but there's so many people who lost their jobs. We saw people migrating home. We have forgotten. It is all forgotten. We don't remember it because, when the calamity happens, you remember it. The moment the calamity passes, you don't remember it anymore. Our mind plays a very clever trick with us. Unless you're traumatized by it, you don't remember it. You move on. You move on, and that's what will happen. We will move on, but something will hold us back. We will be reminding ourselves of how the world ultimately comes down to very basics. And I think that's where, if you remember the basics in life, remember the basics, then I think no matter where you are, in whatever situation you are, you will survive. And I think leaders have to learn what it means, what are basics in life. What do we seek in life? Human beings, all of us. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how powerful you are. When there is a disease, when the virus came, the richest people may pretend that they were living in their private jets and they had the access. But the fact is they didn't have freedom. They couldn't go everywhere. You couldn't go anywhere. You had to stay at home. You could live in luxury. But the fact is you could not fight the virus with your bank balance. You could not fight the virus with all the power in the world. You have the power to kill millions of people, but you don't have the power to defeat this virus. And you have to lock yourself up and mask yourself up and live with it. You have no choice. And you think that bringing you back to basics is what mythology is all about, because mythology enables us through stories to understand what are the basics. Why were these stories told generation after generation after generation? Because they are trying to tell people what really matters in life. When we use the words like leaders, what do we talk about? What are we talking about? Those fundamentals are what we are discussing. So let's understand, when we talk about mythology, what are the basics in life? Let's some very basic things. And if you remember this, you will always be a good leader, because you'll know what matters and you'll know how to take decisions and you know how to prioritize things. And we often don't prioritize what needs to be prioritized. So let's begin with basics. The basic is, what is the fundamental difference between something organic and inorganic? Something which we call as alive and something which is not alive. Jiva means life, that which is alive, or sajiva. And something which is ajiva, does not have life at all. What is that one difference between the object and the organism? And it's easy. You can just look at your desk and see, you have so many objects. But you will always, if you have a plant on your desk, you will realize that every day you have to water the plant, or you have to make sure the plant gets sunlight. And when you observe this, you realize, when you observe these things, you realize that the living organism needs food. It needs food. And that's what separates the world of biology from the world of physics and chemistry. The chemist professor doesn't study hunger. The physics professor, however brilliant he is, and Stephen Hawking writes the history of the world, he doesn't talk about hunger, because physics is not about hunger. Hunger is biology. You see the plant and you suddenly see hunger. It is looking for sunlight, it's looking for water, it's looking for nutrients. You look at animals around you. Look at the cat in your house, the dog in your house, the bird that you keep. Look at the birds outside your house, the animals outside. And they're all looking for food. All day they are looking for food. We as human beings are also alive, which means we are seeking food. And that is the first thing that you will see when a calamity happens. Is there enough food? You will not use the word food. You may use words like, do I have a salary? Do I have wages? Do I have a job? What will happen to my job? The first thing you think about is, how do I survive? And you come back to basics and you talk about food and water and income, economics. And therefore you understand economics. So economics is the study of hunger. But that's not how economics is taught. We are taught about big words, resource management. These are the words that are used, but it really comes down to human hunger. That is why we study economics. We are looking for food. Food is the primary target. And I always tell people the word target in Hindi means Laksh. From Laksh comes Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth. So when people say I'm looking for money, what they're really saying is I'm hungry. And hunger has many names, right? We can use words, if you want to sound sophisticated, we'll use words like ambition. Or we can use words like greed. There is no difference between the two words. You have ambition, your enemy has greed. That's all it is. When we use words like think big, we are saying stay hungry, be hungry. We celebrate hunger in the world. And the more hungry you are, the more you will consume. When we say consumption economy, we are saying an economy that thrives on hunger. We want more and more and more and more and more. And that's the hunger, that thing which separates you from an inorganic object. Bhook lagi hai mujhe. But that's not the only thing that you want. You see, an inorganic, while plants can eat water and nutrients and elements, animals eat plants. And plants don't want to be eaten, which is why they produce thorns. A plant produces thorns to protect itself. Animals eat animals, so therefore animals create organs to protect themselves. Nobody wants to be consumed. We don't mind eating, but we don't want to be eaten. We are terrified of being consumed, and therefore fear becomes a very important thing. We want to protect ourselves. So all organic beings are not only hungry, they are also frightened. They are hungry for food, but they are also seeking security. They want to be protected. And therefore they seek power. We seek power because when we are powerless, we feel insecure and frightened. So now you understood what power is, not as in electricity, but power, Shakti. Power is Shakti. I want Shakti. I want security. I want to be in a fortress where I feel safe. The Hindi word for fortress is Durga. Durg se Durga. So I want to feel safe. I want Durg. I want a bhala in my hand. I want weapons. I want technology that makes me feel safe. So when electricity goes away, we experience panic. When our phone gets lost, we experience panic because when technology goes away, when resources goes away, we feel vulnerable. We feel scared. When a car breaks down in the middle of a dark road and we realize the cell phone does not have power, we get terrified. Fear comes in. Insecurity is something that we don't realize. And these are psychological, they're not just physical needs, they're also psychological needs. Human beings seek emotional nourishment. We want to be nourished emotionally. We constantly enjoy being praised and recognized. That's our emotional nourishment. We don't like being humiliated and insulted because that takes away our power, makes us feel small. We want Durga, we want Lakshmi 24/7. Every child needs it, every human needs it, every plant needs it, every animal needs it. We want to feel safe and we want to feel well fed. And therefore, the sign of love is to be provided food and shelter. When we use words for calling kings, Jahan Pana, shelter of the world, what are we seeking? We are seeking that someone provide us with food, clothing, shelter. And so when we do jobs, we look at people who provide us our salary and say that, you are giving me food, clothing, shelter. But humans are not just giving food, clothing, and shelter. We take something back. We exchange things, and that's what makes us human. So I do a job, I provide a service in exchange for which I get a salary, in exchange for which I get job security. This exchange of goods is what separates humans from animals. While all animals are hungry and frightened, while all animals have, all of us have like leaves seeking food and thorns to protect us, what separates humans from the rest of nature is that we have the ability to exchange goods and services. I can give you food, I can give you security, you can give me food, you can give me security. Therefore, humans are the only living creatures which seek help. Animals don't ask for help. If you look at wild documentaries, when a wing of a bird is broken, it is not going in search of a hospital. It is not calling 911. It has to fend for itself. As humans, if we go through a crisis, we want to be helped because we have the capacity to help. And that's what makes us human. So we have to understand that this understanding of ourselves as humans comes from the fact that we have imagination. Our imagination allows us to learn things about the world. Our imagination allows us to understand how things work and how things don't work. This is what basics of life is about, because we understand that human beings need hunger and food, but they also have to deal with their imagination. This imagination we call Saraswati. Because Sarasa, that which flows constantly flowing, and our imagination, our thought is constantly flowing. And these, our imagination, our thoughts, our ideas, enable us to create a world, which is different from the animal world. In the animal world, you have to fend for yourself. In the human world, you can take care of people and others can take care of you. And that's the measure of civilization. So when crisis happens, the question you have to ask yourself is, did people help you and did you help people? And that is a measure of how cultured and civilized you are. Did your help restrict itself to your family? Did it expand to your employees? Did it go beyond to strangers? That shows how big your heart is. How far do you go? That's the measure of being human. And these are the basics that we sometimes we realize is not taught in our schools and colleges. We learn about biology, but we don't learn about hunger and fear. We don't know that economics is not just about food, but it is also about hunger. Politics is not just about power, it is also about insecurity. The understanding of this is Saraswati. When you understand your hunger and fear, and when you understand the hunger and fear of others, when you recognize the problem and work towards the solutions, when you create thesis and hypothesis and you find solutions, you're using your mind and your imagination to deal with the world at large. And that, at that point, you realize that you are becoming human. So when we talk about basics, we must remember Lakshmi, Durga, Saraswati, the three goddesses. Everybody needs food, everybody is hungry. Everybody needs power because everybody is insecure. And everybody has the ability to recognize the problem and provide solution for others. Saraswati's greatest contribution, which makes us human, is our ability to think by wearing other people's shoes, empathy. This is Saraswati. Imagination allows us to collaborate with others. With Lakshmi, you think of your food. With Durga, you think of your security. But with Saraswati, you start thinking of other people's hunger, other people's insecurities. This ability to expand yourself beyond yourself to the other only happens because you have Saraswati. This is the unique thing about human beings. We can talk to other people, exchange ideas, learn, collaborate, expand ourselves, build on our knowledge, all because we connect with others. No other species is able to do this. This ability to talk to each other, connect with each other is very basic. And I think these things are what make our lives better. That is what COVID took away. We didn't connect with people. We were locked with only families. And we realized the value of people who provide us food, clothing, shelter. And we realized that how many people are dependent on us. When we don't provide employment, what happens to the world? When we don't create opportunities, what happens to the world? When we don't create ecosystems where others can thrive, what happens to the world? So the Saraswati factor forces us to look beyond ourselves at others. So Lakshmi is about hunger, Durga is about power, but Saraswati is about the other. And is the most complex and most not understood goddess. Because we think of her holding a veena in her hand. We think of her as a book to be put in library. I always tell people that please ask why is Saraswati holding a veena in her hand. It is because India is an oral culture. We never wrote down things. We like to talk to each other. But we keep her image in the library where no music is allowed. Lakshmi is associated with books. We have now decided she should be in the library. Usko band rakho, chup rakho. But Lakshmi is about conversation. It's about Upanishad. It's about talking. She should be in the canteen. She should be in the lounge where you're sitting and chatting with people and figuring out what are the problems in this world? What are the solutions you can offer? Where you can share your problems and other people can give you solutions. Where you expand yourself to include others. Where you recognize that the world is diverse, the other. And I think that is the big learning. So post-COVID, our needs will still remain Lakshmi, Durga, and Saraswati. We will still talk about food. We will still talk about hunger. We will still talk about insecurity. We'll talk about power. We will understand. We'll talk about economics. We'll talk about politics, which everybody does. But what is missing in the world before COVID and after COVID is how much do we think of the other? I talk to businessmen and they tell me that they think of consumers and shareholders, but they don't think of employees. Or they think of employees and customers, but not of shareholders. You have to have a 360-degree view of the other. We don't live in times where there is a conversation between people. We want to impose our will on others. These are all indicators that Saraswati is in short supply. And this is the problem before COVID. This will remain the problem after COVID. And that is where we need to stress. While yes, the market will always be there, demand supply issues will always be there. The bigger problem is, do we create an ecosystem where others can thrive beyond us? This is missing in some of the best leaders. Everybody talks about we want to save the world, but only after I achieve my target. And that is not Saraswati. And that is where the problem lies. The ability to think and approach the problem from the other's point of view. What we use words like consumer insights, we use words like critical empathy. I think that is where we need to go. And I hope all of you, as y'all make the journey to the new world order after COVID, don't forget the basics. Lakshmi, Durga, and Saraswati. And if you want to remember this easily, just remember these three letters, which I always tell people, you'll never forget it. It's LSD, Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Durga. And these three goddesses are the basics. If you don't get them, if you get them, life is good. If you don't get them, life is not so good. Thank you and namaskar. If you have any questions, you could ask me and we can take it up. I don't know how you'll handle this. Will you do it via the chat engine or will you do it via the moderator? I don't think the moderator is here.
Mr. Patnaik?
Yeah. Yes. Are there questions? You can ask me and then we can take it up from there.
Yeah, great. So can you help me understand like how you can differentiate a person from his or her skills and his or her characters? So should we value the person's character more than the skill or strength? Or should we value the skill more than the character?
See, it depends on the situation. There is, if you're in a factory, in a lab where you only need his skills, his personality doesn't matter and his person is easily replaceable, then only skills matter. So for example, if you are doing, you're looking for someone in a housekeeping job, then their personality doesn't matter, only their skills matter. So you don't bother about their personality. Unless the personality is thing which disturbs the other ecosystem, the larger ecosystem where everything is very well organized and decided. But in a very different kind of situation where you're looking for building an organization like a startup, where skill is not the only thing, attitude also matters a lot, then you start looking at the personality of the person, whether they get along with people, do they collaborate, are they team players. Those things become very, very important. Are they creating unnecessary friction where it's not necessary? Then that becomes important. So it depends on what level at which we are talking. There is no one standard answer. Yes, you want a husband or a wife who is very good in character and personality, but you also want them to have some skills like washing the vessels, right? If you don't have a husband to wash vessels, what is the use of such a husband?
Makes sense.
So I am really interested to know why do we worship, a certain god on a certain day? We have Monday for Shiva, Tuesday, I
So
think.
these are arbitrary. There is no rational or logic about it. Over
Right.
time, like 100 years ago, maybe this was not done. So
Yes.
this happens over time. This becomes local practice. You won't have it everywhere, and these keep changing. So Shiva is associated with the moon, therefore Monday. Tuesday is associated with something else, and then Wednesday is associated with something else. Shirdi Sai Baba was not a popular deity 200 years ago. He didn't live at that time. Now he's become an important god, and suddenly Thursday has become important to him. And Aarti is done of him, although he's a Sufi saint. So these are strange practices that keep emerging. These practices will keep coming and going. And basically, they help us organize our lives and structure our lives. That's all it is. These rituals enable us to structure our lives, because then in the morning when you wake up, you want to do a set of things. In the evening, you get up, evening you want to do a set of things. It gives your life a kind of a framework that enables you to move from point A to point B. So I think that's the value they bring. They help you create a timetable.
It's more really to organize ourselves, and that's why some people wear certain colors also on these days in our country.
They feel safe. It makes them feel safe. They feel, it's
Secure.
like it's secure, because the clothes make you feel secure. Yeah, it's armor. You wear a particular dress. Some people wear white because they want to look simple. Some people want to wear bright colors because it makes them feel powerful. Some people, so we have always have to, approach things and understand that they serve a purpose. They always serve a purpose.
So then what also comes to my mind is the whole question of the creator, because a lot of people disagree with that there is no creator. Some people would say there is absolutely no God. How do you address that?
Well, is there justice in the world? Some people say there is justice, and some people say there's not justice, right? But can you live without the idea of justice? No, you can't.
No.
In the same way, you can't live without the idea of God. You want to believe that someone is watching over you. But even in the absence of justice, we believe in justice, right?
Yes.
You can give all the proof to the world that climate is changing, and yet people won't believe in climate change. So evidence has no difference, has nothing to do with what you believe in.
Yes.
Trump genuinely believed he was saving the world. You can do nothing about the 40 or 80% of people who vote for him. They genuinely believe that whatever he was saying was right. And that's the way the world is. I've got a few questions coming in the chat.
Yes.
So Brijesh Rai has asked, how can one make happy LS? Do we have a single mantra to worship these goddesses? Listen, I don't give mantras and magicians. It's all a magician who does that. Gurus and all give you these magic formulas to solve the problems of your life. So I'm not that person. So maybe you have to find that person. There's Nirmal Baba, there is Sadhguru, they give you all the formulas to save your life. I'm a mythologist. I decode stories and symbols and rituals. That's what I do. Yeah. So thank you. Raya Paul Ram Mohan, the 3 mantras LSD that you spoke of, how to worship them. I've never asked you to worship anyone in my talk. I don't think, you see, this is what happens when you talk about Lakshmi, Durga and Saraswati. We start thinking of images in front of our house. We think of the God room, and we think of flowers. We don't really do darshan. We really don't see the ideas that are being communicated through these stories, images and stories. I focus on those ideas. Some people don't focus on the ideas. They feel if you do chanting, if you do a few mantras, magically life will become good. Maybe it does for some people, but that's not what I am doing. I am decoding these ideas and helping you think about what they mean. So what does Lakshmi mean? What does Saraswati mean? What Durga means? I'm not telling you about worshipping gods and going, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how our body and our needs have manifested in these images and gods. And unfortunately, that's not what we're taught. Na? We are told, ye Bhagwan ke mandir mein jao aur tumhara sab kuch theek ho jayega. We don't see the gods, although we are told continuously, darshan karo. Darshan karo means look, understand, try to understand what the ancient people are trying to communicate through these stories and symbols and rituals. So that's what I do. So what you are asking is something that you go to some Babaji, and the Babaji will give you the formulas and the mantras that you can chant.
Okay, I have a question. When one is confused, what is the way to get out of it? When you are in a dilemma, what is the best way to get out of it?
Well, it means just take a decision and suffer the consequences.
I can't
That
hear.
is always what we are seeking is, can I take a decision and not suffer the consequences? Every action has a consequence. It's like you have two boyfriends and you decide which one to marry. Both can be jerks. Both can be wonderful. Both can be missed opportunities. You don't know. एक साल बाद क्या होने वाला है किसको पता, but by then you have finished, you have decided. But nowadays it's always easy to just break the knot and tie a new knot, so it's easy. But as somebody's asked me, Narendra Singh has asked me, can you talk about superstition so widely prevalent in society? See, superstition is just people's insecurities manifesting themselves. So people are insecure and they're looking for some quick solution to their problems. And therefore we follow various kinds. Religion is also a kind of superstition. Bolenge to chalega. Hame vishwas hai, for example, when people say I'm going to court, I believe the court will solve my problems. Vishwas hi hai na? Court need not. Sometimes when you see some of the judgments, you're like, oh my God, are these the people who are handling the justice system in our country? But then abhi kya kare? Vishwas rakhna padta hai. So that is also superstition. So superstition and faith are the same thing, really. You believe in something and you just go with that. You believe that life's problems will be solved if you wear red color, blue color. You believe that if I sit on, do vastu, or if I do change the organization of my house, if I change the mantras that I'm chanting, my life will change. And change does happen because the world is continuously changing. Sometimes the change works in your favor, sometimes the world doesn't work in your favor. So we really don't know these things, and we have to go with the flow. So superstition is something that I'm very careful of this word, because what you think is superstition may not be superstition for other people, right? So some people worship things. Some people believe that Friday is the day when God asked you to rest. Some people say Saturday is the day when God asked you to rest. Some people say Sunday is the day when God asked you to rest. And if you ask a businessman, he'll say none of the days of rest. You should work all the time. Like in China, you have to work 9 by 9 by 9. You have to always keep working. There's no concept of Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And they are the richest country in the world right now, but where people have no freedom. So I don't think there are there any other questions?
So just give us about 2 minutes. We're trying to find more questions from the platform. Just give me 2 minutes.
Okay. Is it being shown or streamed somewhere?
Yes, sir.
Or
Yes, sir.
They may have put in that chat box or something, and then maybe someone can copy paste it here.
I think there's a question, sir, about the Greek mythology. Is there any similarity between Greek mythology and Indian mythology?
Well, honestly, superficially, there is a lot of similarity. In both cultures, you have many gods. But the fundamental difference is that they didn't believe in rebirth, and Indian mythology based on rebirth. So that's the fundamental difference. So in many ways, it is like, they believe you live only once, and at the end of your life, if you are a great person, you will go to a special heaven. They didn't believe that there is going the karmic cycle which takes you again and again. This idea didn't exist in the Greek mythology. But yes, they also had monsters. What happened is people who believe in monotheism, that is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, tried to club all religions with many gods, that is polytheism, in one basket. So for many people, especially British, they saw that the Greeks were similar to the Hindus, and then they realized, no, but the Hindu mythology is very different. But there are these similarities and differences. But Greek mythology is about one life; you live only once, and Indian mythology is about rebirth. That's the big difference.
And there's a follow-up question to that answer, that does Mr. Devdutt Patnaik believe in rebirth?
On Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I believe in rebirth.
Perfect answer, sir. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen?
Someone is asking
There's
me,
one more.
how long will it take for the economy to revive? I'm sorry, I'm not an economist, I'm a mythologist. So I cannot answer that question.
Superstitions that are prevalent in our society.
That we have answered, yes.
Oh, that we've answered. Yes.
One more question I have. So basically, is that we have to fear from God, or we should believe that God will take it
Your
no
voice is
matter what?
echoing.
One second. Let me just shut this. 1 second.
Echoing.
Yes, sir. Go ahead now. Go ahead.
So, like, people say that if you do this, God will punish you. So, is that we should be always afraid of God, or we should like believe that God will take care of you no matter what?
See, as a leader or as a business person, ask yourself what works with your team. Does kindness work with your team, or does cruelty work with your team? If you like to frighten people into doing what you tell them, then you believe that God's fear works. So fear works. Those people who believe that fear gets things done will always talk about God being frightening. And those who believe that they can use love to make people do work around them, they will always talk about God is very loving and God is very kind. So it is really a reflection of our personality. So when you see a boss who uses fear to get things done, he will definitely say God is to be God-fearing. And if he uses kindness and gentleness to get things done, then he also believes that God is kind and gentle. So it's a reflection of our personality. Since nobody has ever met God and asked him what we should do, I think it's usually an extension of who we are.
Thank you so much.
There's someone asking Mr. Devdutt Patnaik, what is his writing process like?
Well, I write every day about 3,000 to 4,000 words every morning. So some people go to the gym, some people in the morning, they wake up and do exercise and yoga. I do my writing. That's my writing process.
And where do you get your ideas from?
From people's insecurities. And there are a lot of them.
Right. So then it will be safe to say that writing energizes you as opposed to exhaust you, right?
It energizes, definitely.
Okay. Are there any traps for aspiring writers that you can share?
When people believe that people want to read their writing, that's the biggest trap. You should always work with the premise that nobody wants to read you. Then you will write well.
Right, sir. Bindeshwari, any final questions?
Shall we wind up then?
There is one more question, sir. If you were given a choice to have a superpower, what superpower would you own?
To sleep whenever I want to sleep. I can't sleep easily, so that's the superpower I want.
Okay. And somebody is asking, what is Mr. Devdutt Patnaik's mascot or spirit animal or avatar?
None, really. I've never thought about it.
Okay. All right, sir. So I guess I'd say thank you. I don't have many more questions coming up. Let me see. Let me just give them another minute or so. If you want a writer, what would be your other passion? That's the last one I think I have.
Illustrator. I would be illustrator.
Illustrator. Yes, of course. All right, then I think it's time to say goodbye to Mr. Devdutt Patnaik. Let's have a huge round of applause for that truly wonderful, masterful talk. Thank you, sir. And thank you for taking all our questions, some silly and some not so silly. Thank you very much.